I'm Dr. Rick Whitman. I'm introducing Module 5 for the second time. Something went wrong with my recording and apparently it did not quite upload even though it plays for me. So here I am in the Colorado Mountains a few years ago in northern Colorado, and I'm standing in front of in the snow in fact, in front of a granite boulder that's been weather worn. You can see this intrusion that I was measuring as part of a field study I was doing. Because sometimes to do science you have to get out in the field. It's easier to go to the field and bring rocks like this into the lab. So here we go with Module 5 now. This will give you a rundown and some hints on performing your task during Module 5 and to help you get a fix where we're going next. 5 and 6 begin a whole new series of ideas, as you'll see, and we're getting out of describing something and now we're moving into what we call major milestones, paradigm shift, and discussion. The discussion's a big deal, by the way, and it causes you to interact with other people in the class. In order to do this, we're going to go through a couple of things here. Understanding scientific developments. There's some really interesting things here. You're going to investigate major developments in the natural sciences for informing critical questions. So the trick here is to start to dial in on what's the major idea, the main idea, as well as what are the distractors or limitations in any particular study you've been looking at. And oh, by the way, you should be looking for a secondary source to back up your first article at the Shapiro Online Library. Good source, by the way. Moving right along. You're going to, this introduces the Module 5, actually, and 6. We're going to get into scientific milestones and big ideas that change the world. It's a short video about all the things that have happened, many of them in your lifetime, if you're young enough, that have substantially changed life as we know it. Since World War II, the population of the United States, for example, has nearly doubled, and the population of the world has more or less tripled. However, we live fairly well in America because we have harnessed science to technology to the ideas that keep it driving. This video will get you started, and then you're going to get into the 8 great American discoveries in science, and you'll meet some real heroes here, including one of my favorites. Things that have happened here. Ben Franklin. Not everything you know about him is true, by the way. You've probably never heard of John Henry, but his role in electricity made it possible. Charles Marsh. This is a cool guy. It doesn't look like Indiana Jones, and yet he was in his day. How we got into genetics. The Hubble telescope, which is what it looks like here, has certainly opened the universe to us in a different way. Most of you, well, the internet changes things, and it's how we can learn in this class. And then you've got the moon landing, and that's where technology and science actually intersected, and it's going to happen again. And then we know about early hominids, including Lucy, who was thought to be the very first of our ancestors that was truly human, and yet in fact they found another gentleman who was quite tall, apparently lived in trees, and that turns all the ideas they've been teaching in paleontology for the last 20 years on its ear, which shows you things change. Now, from here you'll see a quick demonstration about the types of ideas that have changed as time went on, and the speed of change is accelerating, as a friend of mine used to say. We live in a really interesting time. Heliocentrism is when we finally started realizing the Earth was not the center of the universe, but rather the Sun is the center of our solar system, and we're still trying to figure out where the center of the universe is. This happens to be Copernicus. You'll hear more about him in this lesson. Your first assignment in Module 5 is 511. It's a quiz on the major milestones video and text that went with it. Following that, you're going to shift into how things are changing and some examples, starting with a fellow named Thomas Kuhn, who developed the word paradigm shift. And here we have people whose ideas changed how we think about things. Darwin, for example, and others. And so he's an example of the very first one of its type. I mentioned Copernicus a while ago. There's a video on him that's quite interesting, not very long, but it's one of the great discoveries of all time, or realizations, where the sun and the earth actually belong in relation to one another. So here you're trying to identify how develops in science support the advancement in natural sciences, and along with the technology. Fun stuff. Then you have a quiz on paradigm shifts, and it's to get your juices going and your thinking caught up to speed. You're allowed 2 attempts. I'd urge you to take it twice to drive the points home. You get the highest score anyway. And then we're going to get into 10 scientists around the world who changed life as we know it. The first one here is Marie Curie, Madame Curie, who came to fame at a time when women really didn't. She is the first, and as near as I know, the only person to win 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different areas, which is quite a fantastic achievement, in one in chemistry and one in physics. So then you got this, typically young folks will say, what's in it for me? Well, this article here answers that. What has science done for me lately? And there's all kinds of examples. Among these, this is a type of light bulb that's called the compressed fluorescent. It's probably on its way out now. As good as it's been, it has mercury in the base. It poses a hazard. If you break it, it's hard to dispose of them. And so I suspect you're going to see more and more of the light-emitting diodes. In fact, they're quite common and cost even less than these bulbs do as well. Which brings me up to something interesting. The overall use of electricity in the United States last year has fallen for the first time in more than a decade, and the reason is because more and more people are using light-emitting diode lights and CFL type lights to reduce their expenses. You're going to hear more about all kinds about electricity, plastic. We wouldn't have modern agriculture without discovery, and certainly not medicine. Oh, by the way, you should be paying some attention to this ongoing thing about the anti-vaccination crowd. I'd point out something. If you walk through a cemetery these days, you'd notice how many gravestones of old had children dying before they were 6, and you don't see that anymore. There must be something to this. Next, referring back to the scientists that you just saw, Darwin, Curie, Einstein, and Newton, and they're all in that parade of characters that made the world great. There are 2 points here to pay attention to. We want to identify major historical discovery that are the foundations for the natural science news story that you have examined. So you want to be looking for some more background information through Shapiro Library. And then you want to provide, this is your discussion area here, provide 2 to 3 sentence summary of the scientist who made historic scientific discovery you identified in your first question. You may have to link a little further, go back to another article that links to your story, but it's possible. Here you have a discussion rubric. If you didn't know what a rubric is, this is the guideline by which I grade your work, or Southern New Hampshire wants me to grade your work. Shifting it a little bit here, the critical elements. How well do you comprehend what you're talking about? Did you do your assignment on time? How engaged were you with making responses to others? And how good is your writing? And all these give you a certain number of points depending on which of these is selected against your submission. And out of that, you get the percentage points or possible points up to 100% against the assignment value for this assignment. So I have to grade by a rubric, so now you know how you can do better by answering to the rubric. All right. and here's where you set up your rubric and you get ready to start your discussion. You want to make sure that you're checking before you send something. Ask yourself, is this really the best I can do? And if not, don't send it. Make sure you're sending the best work you can. Well, that's all I have for now. I want you to pay close attention to what you're doing. You only have 3 assignments this week, but they're worth significant points, and frankly, at the end of the semester, it's all about the points. Good luck. We'll see you soon.